I figure we will review the AFV Club Sturmtiger. This is kit number 35103, as I just reviewed the Tamiya one, and I figure why not just do this one right away, so it's fresh in my mind that I can kind of compare things. This came out in 2006 as opposed to the Tamiya one, which came out in the 90s, so I expect this to be much further ahead. I haven't built any of the AFV Club Tiger stuff apart from the tracks. On the box it says highly detailed engine compartment and structure, so it's going to have, although that just looks like the top part, highly detailed main gun breech. That doesn't look terribly different from Tamiya's. Choice of 2 different counterweights, 2 different bow MG balls, workable torsion bars, and it does have PE for the rifling. So this is my first experience with AFV Club instructions of any kind, and you know, if they're Tigers they have a few. All lates I've noticed though. Larger book in the like actual staple book style. First page we have what looks like upgrades listed. There's Zimmerit tool, brass ammo. Step 1 has us putting in swing arm and torsion bars, which is similar to the way some Dragon Tigers do it, not all though. It's also exactly how Dragon's Panthers go. That seems fine. This step here though is where things get a little strange with the AFV Club ones. They do this weird thing with a spring and the idlers, so I'll be curious to see how that goes. Slightly different connection for the idler arm. So it looks like there's polycaps in between 2-piece sprockets, also possibly polycaps in between 2-piece wheels, and the smaller idler. Now Tamiya had the larger one, which I thought was odd. And then here's another 2-piece wheel. Then just telling us to put on the idler and sprocket, which probably wouldn't do. Running gear, all being told to put on. Interesting. They're telling you to move the swing arms. This rings a bell to me. Somebody's done this and I've seen it, but I can't recall exactly what they want you to do. Could just be that they want you to have it down, put the wheels on and swing them into place. Not exactly sure if they're supposed to be movable exactly or not. So this is the major part that's different on AFV Club ones versus like anybody else's, is they have these weird kind of quirky, let's call them novelty suspensions. I don't know why they don't just do it the way either Ryefield or Dragon have done. The exhausts have, the top is 1 piece, not 4 pieces like Tamiya does, and then these two. Dragon does this sometimes they don't. The jack is more similar to how Dragon would do it, where you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, then just putting some tools on the back. These clamps that hold it are even 2 separate pieces. On Dragon it's just a C shape. Calling out Zimmerit again, and then armored covers and shrouds for the exhaust. Seems very nice. So putting the sides on, that's very similar to Dragon, but what looks different is that the hull doesn't actually have a thin side and then a thicker side. It just has the sides go on without support, so that could be dangerous. This front plate looks very similar to the way Tamiya does it. Then here we have optional side fenders. There's a few pictures of Sturmtigers without their side fenders, but not too many. This is also a very strange piece in the middle. I assume it's for support or something. Not what the real piece would look like in an interior. So putting tools on, and that's about it for this step. A couple of these like little hanger bits. This step is different as it's, dare I say, unnecessarily complex. Like, I don't understand why you would take the engine deck and break it down into its base frame. And then here, they're putting on, there's 2 pieces for these, which is good, as Dragon does it. This is differently done, so we'll have to see how that works. Then all of these parts are separate, which these are openable on a real one for the most part, so that does make sense, but I've never seen a company go that hardcore and break it up. Even Ryefield, which is fully interior, right, didn't do that. The cover for like the engine looks Like, they might have this molded onto these little latches that hold it open, which Tamiya does, which is kind of crap. We'll have to see when we see the parts. But for the most part, this looks cool, but a little overly complex. Then here we have some tiny little parts going on. Fuel filler and coolant caps are separate, that's nice. Some very small wing nuts there. Now these are on the real ones, and I don't think Tamiya has these either. So upper diagram of where they should be going. Now here we're getting into the gun. This seems very similar to the way Tamiya did it. One-piece barrel, 2 halves for the ball. Oh, they look like they have 2 separate pieces of the ball. Interesting. And then this sort of breech end. So here their sight assembly seems to be multi-piece, which will be nice. Or this is elevation, perhaps? So some kind of small bits that have to do with the breech. Yeah, that looks like elevation and stuff. Also multiple pieces for some of this stuff that I think Tamiya has pretty simplified, so that looks good. And then here, a very big difference where they have like a solid front plate that goes onto another plate to sort of create the thickness of the armor. There's also interior detail for the MG. So then you put the gun in from this way and this on from that way, which in Tamiya's it was sort of mounted from the rear. And they do this box slightly differently as well. A little vision slot thing. Here they show you how to wrap the PE rifling. That part slightly intimidates me. Optional counterweight. And then the roof, which I like that the roof is a separate piece, which allows you to have this open and paint it. However, Tamiya's has some interior detail and this one does not. It's actually a separate set. So 2 pieces for this ventilator, that looks nice. Again, some very small stuff. This thing you can actually pick which way it rotates. Some nice detail on that piece too. On these little doors with the sort of grenade launcher, close defense weapon they call it. Very small parts on there, that looks really cool. It looks like the pistol port is actually a hole in this one. Lots of little pieces going on there, and then some very complex stuff here. Type A and Type B. Okay, so there's options for the escape hatch, or whatever that hatch is for. Seems to be one of the main hatches on the thing. And then lots of little parts going on the rear, little fine detail type stuff. And then the crane detail seems pretty intense here. Quite a few pieces building that up. Continuing on with the crane, again, quite a few more pieces here. An actual string is involved at some point, so here's even the wheels are multi-piece. It actually has, I think, photo etch for this little round piece that carries the round. That's a very important part. I had to get aftermarket for my Tamiya one for that. And there is the string there, and then they're down here having you put the engine deck on and the photo etch grills on top of that. So step 25 looks like major assembly. Superstructure goes down onto hull. They're telling you to put on tracks, which in this case are rubber bands. And then here, headlight, front fenders, you know, basically final assembly. Painting and markings, they have just 2, both tritonal, one sort of ambush with sprinkles, let's call it, and just this standard one. I recognize this paint scheme. This is a very famous one. You see a lot of pictures of this. No counterweight here, counterweight there. So we have a photo etch fret with a string for the crane and rifling for the barrel. There's a few tiny other little bits on here, but that's a nice touch. And then the only other etch we have is these grills. Always nice though. It's really annoying when that's not in a kit, so it's nice to see it. Tracks are traditional vinyl. They seem thick and nice, very similar to Tamiya's quality. Solid guide horns. Detail on them is pretty good. They are the early type, which is interesting. Sturmtigers had early and late tracks. You will see pictures of both, so they chose to give early tracks with this, which is interesting. There again, though, is a solid guide horns. The first sprue is a Tiger 1 sprue, which is obvious by certain parts on here that are not needed for the Sturmtiger. There would be exhaust shrouds, the front plate, which I've noticed has the driver's vision slot molded on an AFV Club. Did not know that. And this piece as well. Also didn't know that. The other part of the front plate with the mud flaps, the engine cover, rear plate, tow cable, or track change cable, tow cables which have their barrel cleaning rods molded in, very similar to Tamiya's, and the clasps, tools, and the adapter plate for the inertial starter. Their shrouds seem a little thick. They thin them towards the edges, which is nice, but they seem awfully thick. Track change cable in the later configuration seems about on par with Tamiya. There's our rear plate, again awfully smooth. Same thing's molded on as Tamiya, so here you have the cover for where the inertial starter adapter plate goes, and the thing to tow. I believe that's what that is anyway. These are molded on, which doesn't look great. It looks better on this than it did on Tamiya's, that's for sure. The mud flaps on there is again flat on the bottom, which is incorrect. There's their tow cables, done the exact same way Tamiya does them. Slightly disappointing. Their tools have very similar class to what Tamiya's do, so I would upgrade those as well. There's their front plate. It's got this little thing molded on. This is molded on. This is molded on. Kind of disappointing. I won't be using this, but that's just interesting. One difference here is that on their rear flaps they have the hinges molded on. You don't see that very often. The biggest sprue in here is specifically tooled for the Sturmtiger. Here we have, it looks like interior and exterior main plate, and then those are the front flaps. These are the hull sides, the side fenders, the main kind of part of the, let's call it the mantlet, the front plate. This is that little interior support, and then this is that strange engine deck. So the way they've done the front fenders is different. They are actually accurate on the bottom. Have a look at that. You've got this little lip up, like that. So that's actually pretty good. That would be sufficient for me, because it shouldn't be flat. It should have this little thing like there. And so this side looks pretty okay. Not bad. For plastic, that's not bad. So that's impressive. This plate, which looks to be the interior, now there's an upgrade set from them. A lot of resin in it though. Seems very nice. This side should be flat mostly, apart from something here which I assume locks into other parts of that gun. The front plate itself feels awfully smooth. This must not be the actual exposed part. I think that must be on the superstructure itself, because this is very smooth and has like a peg in it. So this must be an in-between plate. Very, very smooth. Ooh, we got a broken part here. This is that giant crowbar. The clasp on it doesn't seem particularly overwhelming. The shovel is flashy. Clasp is alright, but again missing the part, the detail of the handle where you can open these things, which bothers me. Quite flashy, you can see there. Side plates, really nice pronounced details. Even some interior stuff there. Looks nice on both. No damage or anything. Side fenders are in one piece, which is annoying. They are Nah, about standard for what you see in one-piece plastic Tiger 1 fenders. They're well supported on this sprue, which is nice. Now this piece here is a bizarre one because this is our engine deck, and it's interesting how they molded this hammer inside of there as well as this axe. That is a very large sprue gate. One would almost want to saw that. Strange. Everything else about it seems alright. You'd also have to cut this all out, and this as well, and this as well. It's very strange. It's a lot of cutting. And the sprue gates are stronger than the plastic. Like, that's the plastic, that's the sprue gate. So then there's the mantlet. Cast texture seems a little bit more subtle than the Tamiya one, but it's nice. You can see it there, picking up in the light. There's the driver's vision area, the two types of MG34 mount, and there's that front plate. It's got a nice little box for the headlight to mount. Here we have another sprue that is specific to their Tiger 1 lights. Most of this is stuff we won't need. This is broken off. These bags had not been opened until now, so a lot of this was done in transit. Don't know how long this is sitting on a shelf. It is a 10-year-old kit, so I'm not going to complain. Here we have sort of inner workings for the kit anyway, of how the mantlet goes. Breech assembly, interesting version of what looks like the framing for the catch bag. Driver and radio op hatches, final drives, bow MG detail, couple of tools. Final drives look alright. Maybe a little less sharp than I'd like. Breech looks okay. Jack block seems very smooth. All these little parts seem alright, I guess. Two different MG34s. They look okay. Jack pieces look alright, pretty thin, which is good. Hatches seem adequate. We won't be using them, but we do know about Tigers, so let's look. Interior detail is a little bit muted compared to Dragon. This sprue seems to be gun parts, as well as some other tiny bits. We have counterweights here, the two types of balls that go around the thing there. Lots of small stuff. It's a little bit hard for me to identify, honestly, and I know it's parts of the breech. And then these were in the box. I have no idea. I think one of them was on this sprue, so this would be our outer barrel and sort of the inner part of the barrel. We'll look at this piece first. This is a pretty important part of the thing. Not really caring. There's burring here and a pretty obvious mold seam here and here. That's not great, so I'll have to get rid of that. One inaccuracy with the AFV Club one versus the Tamiya one was these holes, which sort of expelled gas when the gun was fired, are supposed to be equidistant from the inner circle to the out, right? So they should be halfway between here and here. I learned that from the Perth Military Modelling site comparison, by the way, and if you haven't seen that, that's fantastic. If you're debating between the Tamiya one and this one, that's an absolute resource. Although Tamiya did not have these and this molded on, so I'm not they look fine, so I don't think it's really a bad thing to have them on already. But that is one, let's call it, downfall of this, is that these are a little too close to the inside. This piece looks nearly identical to the way Tamiya did it. I think Tamiya had slightly larger pegs here, but the same general idea. Not much to say. It's a cylinder with some notches cut in it. When you build a thing, it sort of fits on like that, and that's the main part of the gun. Counterweights look pretty simple. And then here's the other guy. He's literally just a circle. There's our breech. Got some nice detail on it. These balls don't really need to do a whole lot, or look, you know, a certain way. I don't think you actually can see them when the thing is together. These small parts look all right. Maybe they could be a little thinner. There's your pistol ports. And some real small stuff, close defense weapon. This sprue here is the roof and, oh, that's interesting, the front plate, which has these big beefy kind of bolts on it. Now some Sturmtigers that you see in pictures had that on the lower front and some didn't. So this one has a lot of options that the Tamiya one doesn't. On here we also have, again, just roof parts and parts for the crane. So that would be the interior of the roof, which is very, very smooth, and that would be the top. Got some kind of cooling imperfections in it right there, but that shouldn't be an issue. The welds seem alright. You can see them right there. Parts for the crane seem a little small, easy to break, that's a good thing. All of this seems pretty good. And here's that lower front plate. These are very prominent, very nice. This sprue is just the parts for the engine deck that aren't the framing, so you know where all the intakes go. You get the option for two different types of this rear part, kind of where the snorkel would go, and just a lot of tiny little bits. This all looks pretty nice, actually. See, the difference between these two is that little opening right there versus sort of this plate that's just on there. These are done in a very different way. So you have this piece that kind of extrudes out, and then you just put in that framing. It does look a little flat. Let's call it unrefined on the back side. I know you'll never see that, but Dragon manages to not have parts that look like that. Wing nuts again? Oh yeah, those are really tiny. These look nice, very thin. Lots of knockout marks too, which is a good sign. We have two of these. Now mine were, when they came, were like fused together in that bag, and I had to, like, you know, get them apart. And this one, now these are just standard Tiger 1 fenders, but this one was kind of off, and the armored exhaust cover on that one was off, so a little bit damaged. We'll look at this one though. It is torsion bars, half a sprocket, armored exhaust cover, standard fenders, a couple of grab handles, and part of the exhaust. The swing arms for the torsion bars look pretty good. Not sure how they'll do the part where the torsion bars lock in, but hopefully well. It seems pretty nice though. All these small parts seem alright, maybe a little thick. And when I say that, maybe what I mean is that the sprue gates are awfully heavy for parts like this. There's your light, U-shaped tow hooks, cast texture on there, subtle but existing. Again, one-piece fender is not ideal. Oh, apparently you've got a 2-meter antenna hiding in there, an awfully flashy one, but there it is. And then this is probably for spare tracks right here. Oh, that's fun. Then we have two of these, which are the steel road wheels. We also on this sprue have the main part of the exhaust, the outer part of the drive sprocket, and some spare track links for the side of the turret on Tiger 1, I assume. So here we're comparing Tamiya with AFV Club. Awfully similar looking. The AFV Club ones might be a little bit tighter, but I can't honestly say that and believe it, so man, they're really similar. Sprockets as well. The detail on this is pronounced a little better. So, I actually kind of like to look at the Tamiya one better. Wheels seem okay in general though. There's even detail on parts you won't see. We do have the smaller idler. Just for direct comparison, that is a early idler and that is a late. So they were quite different sizes. The spare track lengths are of the late type. They have cleats on them. Spare track hangers we won't need. Also, we have polycaps and these springs for the idlers. This is our main superstructure piece. The detail looks pretty nice. So these are not molded on the Tamiya one. They're molded on the lower part, but not on the upper part, which is kind of strange. These indents feel a little bit extreme, since these were just sort of, you know, pieces welded onto the side of this structure. I don't know why they have such large indents to make sure you don't mess them up. My issue with that is that if you get the photo etch upgrades, those are very, very thin, then you would have to fill these and put the PE on top of them. Rear seems alright. Let's check the welds. Better than on Tamiya's, I would say. Not a bad piece. It's got nice support for when you glue the roof on. I think it looks like it would fit well. Little lip here. It's also kind of flashy though. Right there, not terribly great. But there's those welds. They look pretty nice. Lastly, we have our hull tub. Now this is a very strange way of doing this, as this is flat. Our more traditional Tiger tubs are sort of like this. Even the Dragon ones, which have a separate plate with detail here, do have something going up there. So this is AFV Club's very different way of doing this. Now this has late hull extensions, whereas this has earlier ones. See the difference? This is flat, and then this goes down farther and then pops out. I'll have to check reference to see which one of those is more common. Now, one thing I complained about with the Tamiya one was the lack of scalloping on the upper surface here. AFV Clubs does have that, so it has scalloping on the top and side. The plate here seems a little bit simplified still, and these bump stops, they're alright. The weld is definitely better everywhere on here. Anywhere there should be major welding on plates is severely lacking in the Tamiya and is much better on the AFV Club one. So there's some comparison of like the bump stops, for instance. But there's the double scalloping. And up here, it is not there, it's only there. But there's your hull extensions. Which I actually thought when I was looking at the Tamiya one, it was odd that this had earlier type. These are what lates have, but I know that some Sturmtigers were made out of just whatever was lying around, so. As far as weld details go, like you can see here, you've got some nice welds, and here it's just smooth. There's like nothing here, and AFV Club has all this detail there. So that's what's in this box. It's actually quite a bit more than I expected. And when comparing that to what was in here, now I would have to say that this looks much more encouraging out of the box. I did get a ton of aftermarket stuff for the Tamiya one though, but even just these fenders were much better. And there's lots of more interesting assemblies, whereas the Tamiya stuff is pretty simplified. That being said, this is much more expensive. I can't remember what I got this for, it's quite a while ago, but I'm going to go with probably $30, $35. And you know, the Tamiya one, you see it shows, and it's kind of everywhere and cheap, at least in the US, so I think this will be better. Still have to replace the tracks, and still have to dress it up a bit if you want it to be great, but definitely better, but definitely more expensive.